Is your heart breaking just a little bit more about that story than most years? It may be. This week I was talking to a friend who has a marriage that is falling apart. There's no big drama, there's no adultery, there's no abuse. But what he told me was that he let things pile up, and every time he was hurt or frustrated in the marriage, he grew another layer of a shell on his heart. He got a lot of layers, and he became really hardened. And he said, she tried to break through many times, but I made it hard. And now they're living separately. And he was hoping that that would make her want to reconcile, but she's not sure she wants to. So now he was the one who was cold and distant. But he said, I can't tell you how much I'm hurting. He said, it feels like there's a gash in my heart. It reminded me of a woman who had recently been divorced, and her description of what she was going through, she said, I feel like a farmer on a tractor has dragged a plow over my heart. Maybe you can relate to a time in your life where it felt like that. There's a gash in my heart, he said. What has caused a gash in your heart? The story that we just heard today is a story that puts a gash in the hearts of people close to Jesus. Even us, 2,000 years later, we feel it. But it is very interesting and important for us to notice the different ways that his friends and followers dealt with the gash that was in their heart. Let's review some of the things we just heard. Peter gets a sword and wants to fight. Pilate washes his hands and denies any responsibility for any of it. The apostles want to go to sleep. Wake me up when it's over. Peter pretends he doesn't even know Jesus, makes up a story. The disciples took off, ran away. Every single one of those things is a coping mechanism to deal with the gash. Every single one of them. And we do those things too. But not everybody in the story did that. Did you hear the other way that some people there that day responded? Did you hear what the women did? They stood there and they watched. They said nothing. They did nothing. They just stood there and gazed at him on the cross. It says that the earth quaked and the temple was rocked and the soldiers were freaking out and running around and trembling. But the women stood there. They watched. They waited. Think about all of the things everyone else was doing. Fighting, withdrawing, sleeping, pretending, lying, blocking it out, taking off. They found another option. It hurt like hell, I'm sure. But they decided to stand there and take it. Do you know why people sleep and pretend and run off and lie and want to fight? It's because they can't stand it. They can't stand what's happening. Have you ever said that about a situation in your life? I can't stand this. Have you said that in the last 3 weeks? I can't stand this. The women stood it. Do you see? The women stood. When we say I can't stand it, we're unwilling to do what those women did. We want to do one of those other things, and none of them work. And all of them are disgraceful. Can you imagine, even today, I imagine that heaven is total bliss. But do you suppose that every Palm Sunday, Peter in heaven says, do we have to read that story again? I really wouldn't mind if we left out some parts. But the women, they stood there. What happened when Joseph of Arimathea put him in the tomb? He did a beautiful thing for him, and then he left. and it said the women sat there looking at the tomb. They didn't run. They didn't fight. They didn't pretend. They didn't take off. They didn't shut down. They didn't go to sleep. They were there. It strikes me that we need to think about this right now because coronavirus is ruining our plans. Even if you are one of the very blessed ones who is not infected and doesn't know anyone personally who is, your plans have been ruined. And there may be a chance that your financial situation is unbelievably horrible right now. You may now be unemployed, or maybe there's multiple people in your life who are unemployed. It is making life so hard, and we're not through the woods. We've been told this week that our state, which has the most cases right now, which had over 600 deaths yesterday, that state is not even to the peak of the curve yet. We're facing so much fear of losing people on top of it. And so it's putting a gash in our hearts. How are you dealing with that gash? As your heart is broken and bleeding by this, what are you doing with the gash? Have you paid attention to what some people are doing? They're saying things like this. This is biological warfare, and we're going to find out who did this, and we're going to make them pay. Okay, Peter. This is all political. You know what? The media is just playing into someone's hands, and this is all manipulation. I don't want any part of this. Okay, Pilate. This is all fake. It's not even happening. Or how about this one? There was a televangelist in Texas, famous person who's been on TV for years. You may have seen footage of his service last week. He declared spiritual warfare on COVID-19. He cast it into hell, and he declared America cured. Okay, pretend. This is not a game. None of those things are going to work. This isn't political. It's not a joke. It's not something that we can fight against. We can't stop it by piercing it with a sword. We have to stand it. And all of us are being faced with the feeling, I can't stand it. The women stood it. For a lot of us, we're becoming different people because our hearts are broken. If you look back over your life, there's a good chance that what most shaped you into who you are is a time when your heart was broken. What if a broken heart is just another word for an open heart? Is there a chance that for a lot of us, our hearts are like my friend? They have such a shell on them. They are so hardened and calloused that nothing really gets us. So we hear ourselves saying things that we never would have said at an earlier, more tender time in our life. We send comments on social media that don't reflect a loving Christian heart. But when we have a gash in our heart, all of that changes. What if the gash that's in our heart is not a breaking, but a new doorway that's been installed into our heart? Is the way that we walk through that door by not running, by not coming up with a coping mechanism, but actually standing it, like the women? A parishioner in Coxsackie wrote me this week. She wrote me this card, and she said something remarkable. She said that the way she's coping with this is every day she's going to St. Mary's when the church is open, when no one's there, and she goes and she sits on the side where she can see clearly the statue of Jesus' mother. And this is what she wrote me. Salve Regina, she said. Have you ever noticed the calm expression on the face of our Holy Mother? Very calm. Imagine all that she went through. And her face is always very calm. Then she wrote me this quote. Put on the full armor of God so that you can make your stand against the devil's schemes. Then she closed it with, "Be not afraid." Have you ever looked at her face? Do you know what it made me think of? Do you remember what was said to her when her little boy was 8 days old? She brought him to the temple, and the old man Simeon said, "Oh, what a blessing to be his mother." And then he said to her, "Your heart will be pierced by a sword." Pierced by a sword. Mary had the most open heart of anyone we knew, because sometimes a broken heart is an open heart. Coronavirus is leading us to the cross that Jesus was carrying today. We know that's true. So what are we going to do? Are we going to fight? Are we going to play a game of pretend? Are we going to run or shut down? Or are we going to make like those women and stand it?